Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on funding opportunities to conserve and restore tribal forest lands. My name is Gail Shihak. I'm the IANTA's Tribal Relations and Outreach Manager. For those of you who are not familiar with IANTA, for nearly 2 decades, IANTA has served as the national voice for American Indian nations and Native Hawaiians engaged in cultural tourism. In addition, IANTA provides technical assistance and training to tribal nations and Native-owned enterprises in cultural tourism, hospitality, and recreation. A recent Department of Commerce report reported record-breaking numbers in 2021, with the outdoor recreation industry topping $826 billion in economic output, and that outdoor recreation economy has bounced back even stronger after the COVID-19 pandemic. Building a recreation program requires planning and resources. The USDA Forest Service has several programs that can help tribes plan and develop to protect and improve their forest lands for recreational uses. Candace Polinsky, the coordinator of the Western States Community Forest and Open Space Conservation Program, will be introducing our presenters today for our webinar. Candace is located in the Pacific Northwest region. Most of her career with the Forest Service has been working with the National Forest System, which allowed experience with the mechanics of realty transactions. Several years into her adventure with state and private forestry, she enjoys working with new community forest partners who have become friends. Thank you for joining us, Candace. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Gail, and what a nice treat. I didn't know that you were going to read that little bio. That's nice. Thank you. And also, I just want to say really quickly, thanks for your patience. And just while we were getting going, had a few technical difficulties, and hopefully everything will work out smoothly for the rest of our time together. Thank you also for allowing the space, I guess, with all of us here to talk about the different opportunities. But what I'm going to talk about here is the Community Forest and Open Space Conservation Program. We call it CFP for short, just so there's no confusion. And I also, in some of the technical difficulties, we sort of had gone back and forth with sharing a video, and we're going to not do that, but just please know you'll have the opportunity to view that later, as the link is included in some of the slides. So whoever is running the slides right now you're more than welcome to click down a couple of slides in the presentation. A little bit of an overview also that I want to share before we get going is that we were going to watch a video that was produced. I just want to tell you a little bit of background of it. It was produced in partnership with the Kalispel Tribe of Indians and Sustainable Northwest, that is a convener of a group of which I'm an executive committee member. It's called the Northwest Community Forest Coalition. So the video tells, it's part of one of a video series of community forests throughout the Pacific Northwest through a grant with the Forest Service, with the objective of telling the story of community forests and what they mean to communities and to economies, but also what they mean to people. So on this slide, you see a link that the top one is a direct link to the Indian Creek Community Forest of the Kalispel Tribe. And then the lower one is a link to the video on the Northwest Community Forest Coalition page. And also at the end of the presentation, there's a final slide that gives another link to the entire video series. And I encourage you to check it out. So I also think it's important to highlight a few valuable elements for our time together, certainly knowing and recognizing that 5 minutes is not enough time to really present a full Program 101 or how to apply webinar. But the community forest program we're leading off with it is because it's really unique in the suite of programs we're going to highlight today, that the funding is available directly to tribes for land acquisition. So ultimately that means tribal ownership, and that the community is the manager of that property. You have the opportunity to see your values reflected and your resource objectives implemented directly on that property. The program is a nationally competitive grant opportunity where all applicants are evaluated according to a set of scoring criteria in several categories. Importantly, community benefits. Those are broken into 4 different categories. And just also really quickly about the slides going in the back, I will ask to go back to the one previously in just a second. This was just some of the overview information I wanted to share. But out of those community benefits, we would be looking at economic benefit, environmental benefit, a recreation component, as well as a educational component. And we have a public participation component. Those are just to name a few of the scoring criteria under which all applications are evaluated nationally. Also, a core principle of effective community forest management, I think that I've found throughout my time with the program, and particularly in the Pacific Northwest, is the continued production of goods and services. And so for our time together and for this audience, specifically talking about tourism opportunities. Another core principle of community forest management and the community forest management concept is the ability to deliver meaningful public benefits and rights to communities. So without seeing the video previously, again, I really do encourage you to view it. It's just over 5 minutes, so not too much time, but like valuable information. To look at this slide here. So on the left-hand side, these are some images from community forest properties in the Pacific Northwest and technically Northern Idaho also. But I just want to highlight a few key points of sort of things for you to consider that I'm trying to drive at with highlighting some of the things about CFP. So on the left-hand side is an image from the Indian Creek Community Forest. They have a fish pond on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, you see a trail system, and that is the community forest in Northern Idaho, and that is called Pine Street Woods. So in both cases here, the landowners utilize the resources on the property to meet their objectives. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. And again here, both of these images are from the community forest in Idaho, Pine Street Woods. On the left, there's an outdoor structure that hosts various educational and recreation opportunities. On the right-hand side, you see a portable sawmill that directly contributes to activity on the forest. So for example, materials for the facilities, as well as further educational and stewardship learning opportunities like workshops for furniture design, for example. So these images can easily be highlighting anything from cultural or historical practices or art, whether that's folk and traditional practices or festivals. Kind of the point I want to again drive home with these images is that these images aren't to explain what these landowners are doing and what these communities are doing, but to help you consider possibilities for you and how to capitalize on resources that you have or that you might have in the future. The community forest program is certainly, it is just one tool in which to realize economic benefit in communities through your own land ownership and your community participating in directing that resource management and the focuses and values that you want to highlight from that property. Activity that occurs on community forest properties can result in increased economic benefit. So not just to the landowners, but also to the surrounding communities. So for example, both of these projects highlight opportunities for job creation, increased patronage to surrounding businesses in the community, and educational opportunities that create further possibilities. Kind of the final thing is that it's just an observation that I have and that I encourage people to think of and consider as they move forward in thinking through possibilities and considering what opportunities really do exist, is that some of the economic impacts, when they're compiled and community forest owners tell their stories, the metric of success, that we want to say of like acres protected from a program perspective kind of starts to seem a bit immaterial. When you start saying how many people are employed, jobs that are created as a direct result of activity on that forest, or businesses that are created to provide services to the community that frankly didn't exist before to support either management of the forest or activities that occur on that property, it's just really striking and really impactful and very meaningful. And it creates a lot of impact when you hear people tell that story directly from their own experience. The last slide here, if you just flip to the next one, this is a link to the other community forest videos in the series I was mentioning at the beginning from the Northwest Community Forest Coalition. And also, again, because this isn't a full time to talk about how to apply and the full derivation and development of the program and all the ways, the nuances of the guidelines, I just want to remind you that the Community Forest Program and all of the programs we're talking about here today, we offer the opportunity to work directly with program staff, myself, my colleagues here, my other colleagues not presenting today, to navigate like project eligibility, application requirements, and any process questions that you have. Also planned, hopefully it will come through, the opportunity to click on some feedback on whether or not you have any interest in talking further and having some more in-depth conversations about this program or any of the other suite of programs we'll talk about today. So with that, I am going to stop speaking mostly, and speaking of examples, we're going to turn it over to Gabe Perkins, and he is going to share his own screen with a presentation from the Bethel Community Forest, and I will let him bring up his slides right now. So I think Gail or whoever is sharing, just stop sharing and let Gabe pull up his slides, and he'll share some about their forest.
I think I can do that. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, it looks perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you, Candace, Gail, Sherry, Bianca, Margaret, Dan, everybody for being with us here today to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, which is community forests. My name is Gabe Perkins. I live in Bethel, Maine. I'm from Bethel, Maine, and I am the executive director of an organization called Inland Woods and Trails. We were founded 11 years ago, and I have a small staff of 3, a board of 10, and we work to connect communities through trails. And to do that, a couple things just to talk about briefly before we get into community forests is one such way that we do that is we run a winter trail center for groomed skiing, fat biking, and snowshoeing that connects to the local elementary school and the local preparatory school, where you can navigate through, and we offer free season passes to every student in the school district. We manage recreation land for municipalities, for the town of Bethel, and then 20 minutes up the road in a town called Rumford. And this all manifests itself out as to what we manage is 85 miles of trails over 10,000 acres in 5 different towns, including ownership of 5 different parcels that make up what's called the Bethel Community Forest. And we can't do any of this without partners. We're a small trails organization just trying to make something happen. So we've grown as time has gone by and gotten a little bit better at doing our work, I hope, but you have to do it with partners. So we have really strong partners with the Forest Service, Land for Maine's Future, national organizations like the Trust for Public Land, the Conservation Fund, regional organizations like the Northern Forest Center, and then the people who actually live in these communities, because they're the reason we're doing our work. And I need to now advance my slide somehow. There we go. And this whole thing about connecting communities through the sustainable management of high quality, durable trails and woods for all years is really the result of a conversation that happened 20 or so years ago in the Bethel area. After I moved away and before I moved back, this conversation happened. And so I've adopted this, and our organization has adopted this as our charge. But there was a community forum that said, you know, what do we want to do with our recreation future? And here's the little village of Bethel, little quaint hillside village. And the goal was to connect. They're like, why don't we make a trail system that connects two anchor destinations, Mount Abram ski area and Sunday River ski resort. And it's about 3 towns separated. It's 15 miles as the crow flies. And through a sorted set of turns and twists, it became our charge and our vision to implement that as an organization. So we work really to do that, to make these connections physical, people forward recreation connections between Mount Abram, the village of Bethel, the schools, and then to Sunday River. And so this, you know, but how do you do it, right? I mean, there's a small community ski hill in Sunday River, there's the village in the middle, and then there's Sunday River, or Mount Abram is the small ski hill. Sunday River is this large ski resort that gets 500,000 skier visits a winter. There's multiple hotels up there. And so in some ways, it's really helped us do it, I hope, a decent job at tourism in the Bethel area. And recognizing that there's these anchor destinations that we wouldn't really have, we wouldn't have the opportunity, I don't think, without them. So there's really a acknowledgement that Sunday River, as it's grown over the last 40 years, has really helped us. And Mount Abram now is activating its lands in the summer for mountain biking. It's really helped us kind of to grow and to feel comfortable that we're able to implement this vision. Because the next slide is going to be, what does that vision look like on a map? And it's controlled chaos, right? it's like, all right, so you got Mount Abram in the lower right-hand corner, you've got Sunday River up in the middle, and then every other color, blue, pink and purple and orange, those are existing trails. Red, and then yellow is like, here are some opportunities to make this happen. And what happened with the Bethel Community Forest? Again, we're a trails organization. We're just trying to, we're people forward, trying to be as excited about the physical act of trail work rather than like the nuts and bolts of how it happens. But it became pretty clear early on, and it reflects itself in our vision, in our mission, which is durability. And so if we're going to implement this vision that the community asked us to do 20 years ago, it's the durability of the land that really matters and resonates with us. So we want to make an interconnected year-round trail system. Maybe we should go ahead and try to own that land. And since it was a community process that started, it was the best and natural solution for the creation of what became the Bethel Community Forest was to go through the community forest and open space program. Because the process that Candace talked about, here's an opportunity, you get the nuts and bolts of your grant, but there's also like a public planning process that is a real critical part of this process. That's really the most fun, because in some ways it validated for us that 20-year-old vision still held up, but it also created an opportunity to take a check-in 20 years later with skeptics. You open the doors, you don't know who's coming through, right? So it's like, there's some skeptics who are concerned about, I don't know, land coming off municipal tax rolls, or land going out of development, or just the hows and whys. And again, we were this young, I was the only staff member at the time, like young, small organization trying to make this sort of thing happen. And it can, there is maybe some skepticism about our ability, but you work with partners like the Forest Service and with the Trust for Public Land and Northern Forest Center to kind of bring that whole thing together and coalesce it into a vision. So you start with this little germ of an idea. Maybe we should be the landowner to implement this vision, right? And you gotta heal for and care the land, and listened to the community. And what they said, overwhelming, which was helpful, was we want recreation trails. We want a year-round trail system and trails that can provide jobs for people in the shoulder season months, bolster the economy in a more of a year-round way. Because again, with the Sunday River and Mount Abram winter focus, sometimes a lot of places close up in the summer. We have sort of this sometimes opposite problem, particularly in Maine. Maine is incredibly busy on the coast in the summer and can be a little slow inland, but there's a lot around. Snowmobiling, that is a good rural economic driver, but we're about making the smoothing out the lines to create a robust year-round economy based around the natural resources that we have. And I think I hope that's one thing that the community forest program recognized, in that there's this opportunity that doesn't come along. It's 1,000 acres that pops up for sale. No one has the capacity to step forward. It's us. We're going to listen with intent and make this happen. Can't do it without partners, working with the Forest Service and our partners along the way to pull it together. Because now you get something like this, right? You get these. This is a part of the Bethel Community Forest, and it's attached to the town forest that we manage for them. And there's this place. This is 2 miles from downtown Bethel, so you can kind of get out real fast and feel kind of out there. And on a map now, this is about recreation. We love recreation. We bought the land with the help of the Forest Service and the Land for Maine's Future program and all these public citizens. And they're like, start building trails. So here we are. We bought the land in 2019. This is 2022. We've done all this in 3 years. We've done 7 miles of hiking trails. There's about 10 miles of mountain bike trails. There's we hire people to build some mountain bike trails. We do some of it ourselves. We have volunteers who wanted to make some trails happen, and so we said, sure, go ahead. You get community labor involved and volunteer labor to help pull these things together, and it becomes this sort of fun place to recreate, and it sort of squarely sits between town and Sunday River and Mount Abram. And the biking on the left side map, that is, again, there's some double track in there, so there's easy places for families to go. There's more difficult work or trails to go on. And then on the right, on the hiking side, this shows a little bit of it, but we've now added an additional 500 acres just to the west, Community Forest West. That happened in November. So now we've got a whole new place to play and to figure it out and to use that process that we went through with the community to deliver on the next steps, which we did a good job building this, but now the next step is what's really the plan? What's really the plan for recreation? So you do all this work to buy the land. It took 5 years from start to finish to make that happen. And then we put in a few things that we knew we wanted to do or to connect some old existing trails. But now it's like, well, now what are we really doing here? How are we really going to make this trail system connect to the town in a year-round way? And then how are we going to activate it as a rural economic development driver? So, and mountain bikers, I don't know if you've met mountain bikers, but they love trails. They want trails the day before yesterday and the day after tomorrow and today. When are you doing it? When is more happening? Can I go do it? Can I bring some buddies? There's all this stuff, and it's great because it helps. It's sort of an infectious feeling that you get, like, yeah, let's just make some more trails, and the community helps us, take care of them every spring and fall when we got to, make sure all the trees that are blown down over the winter get picked up. But they also said, what's really going to happen here? Like, these are cute. This is a fun little community forest. We love it. What's next? And so we worked with the International Mountain Bike Association to do what's called a Trail Accelerator Grant, where they help provide planning expertise to articulate this vision, or whatever your vision is. We we wanted to activate the community forest with mountain bike trails and multi-use and shared use trails, shared use and purpose built, and but do it on our land and on the town of Bethel's land. Make that connection to Sunday River really, really tangible and real. And this is what's next. We haven't even really put this out into the world too much, but this is a 65-mile recreational trail plan for these 4,000 acres that connects Sunday River to Bethel, and the infrastructure that has been put in by the community over the past 20 years to connect the village that I showed you in one of the earlier slides to this. And so now the job is to do this, which is a fun opportunity. It's a generation of work, right? But it helps. I hope as we go through this plan, which will take 15 years to do, to slowly turn that boat of a year-round economic center based around recreation. And honestly, like, it would not have happened without the community forest program. Like, I can't tell you how perfectly that fit our community, because community forests, they reflect the community that they're in, and when they're done well, right? The process is intentional. There's a lot of opportunity for give and take, and just that process is really really attractive and really helpful, because it's open. It's not I just want to do something over here. It's really being intentional about opening the doors and letting people in and asking them what they want. And so that's just where we're at. I mean, in Bethel, it's a fun opportunity. I mean, I always look for more opportunities to do other community forests. Like, we're working on one in Rumford, just up the road, 20 minutes away. I was like, I know the perfect process for this. It's community forest. Like, this is what can be really engaging with your community. Provides a lot of community ownership, pride in the process, pride in the land. It also creates opportunities for, I hope, I haven't measured it yet. It's time to start measuring stuff, but measure economic development, impact, and things of that nature. So that's pretty much what I have. I mean, hopefully that went through the story okay of what we're doing, but happy to answer any questions. woodsandtrails.org, or my email's right there on the bottom of the slide, gabe@woodsandtrails.org.
Thank you so much, Gabe. That was wonderful. And a couple things. One is really great images here. And so we sort of, thank you for stopping sharing. That's what I was going to offer next, and give Gail or Bianca or Sherry a little bit more time to pull back our slides to get to the other presentations. But you did a wonderful job, Gabe, of one, as I said, sharing some really fantastic imagery, also your story, but also making further illustrating the opportunity to capitalize on resources that are already there in order to meet goals that your community communicates that this is what you want. And so being able to use the things that are there in ways to meet your needs and see your values reflected, that is wonderful. Great. So I see the slides are pulled up here for Dan Goldine. I will hand it over to him to tell us a little bit about the Recreation Economies for Rural Communities program. Take it away, Dan.
Hi, as Kenton introduced, I'm Dan Goldine. I work for the Forest Service Cooperative Forestry and our landowner assistance team based out of Washington, D.C. Gail, if we could go to the next slide. The Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program is a partnership with us, with the EPA Office of Community Revitalization, and for those within the relevant geographies, the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Northern Border Regional Commission. This is a technical assistance program, so we're providing subject matter expertise as opposed to financial resources like some of our other programs, to work on the connection between your outdoor recreation assets and your downtown, so that outdoor recreation is leading to more sustainable use of the areas to get more people downtown, spending some money in the community and increasing other benefits for the community. We could go to the next slide. As I was talking about, this is around connecting Main Street with the outdoor recreation assets. We're looking for growth, for holistic growth with sustainable use of the land around your town, or around anything that you define as a downtown area. We go to the next slide. Talk about the 3 steps of this process. First is the assessment. This is us working alongside the community to look at what assets you have, what gaps you have, where we can work on filling in those gaps. Convening, the central aspect of this whole process, is a 2-day workshop with the community, working with members of federal agencies participating, and where relevant, members of tribal leadership, of municipal government, of state government, whatever agencies are relevant to your needs. And then implementation afterwards, creating a community action plan and implementation guide to set everything we discussed in motion. We'll go to the next slide, talk a little more about the assessment process. Assessment is done through 3 planning calls in preparation for the workshop. And then in between those, the communities fill out their community assessment. If we go to the next slide, we'll look at a little bit of what's involved with that. So it's figuring out who should be at the table, what everyone will be bringing to the table, when we'll be meeting, what we'll be talking about, and what are the specific goals of your community, what you're trying to get out of this process. Increased community health, increased tourism, more sustainable tourism, better relationship with federal lands or local lands. We go to the next slide, we'll talk about the convening, where we meet for a 2-day workshop, usually centered around the tour of the community, and then different types of planning sessions, planning activities, meetings, depending on which partners are most involved and how that works. Every community is different, so what this looks like is different. We did year 1 this program 2020 and 2021, so we also have done many of these virtually, as you'll see in a little bit. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so this, yeah. So this, we're going to look at example Cambridge, New York, because they centered their workshop and their plan around their community forest. Better connecting the community forest with the community, getting more people into the forest for outdoor recreation, and more people who are doing outdoor recreation in the forest into downtown to spend some money. So looking at connectivity infrastructure, what roads, bike lanes, walking paths were needed, and then what businesses would best serve the outdoor recreation activities, be it guides, rental shops, gear supplies, a brewery. And it was a good connection with their community forest, and then creating next steps for planning how better to use it to improve the town long-term moving forward. And next slide, we'll see their workshop. This was one of our virtual ones. Yes. So talking about all of those aspects of using the community forest, using outdoor recreation assets, and connecting better the community, the region, tourists visiting. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go out and spend time in the forest, but they did send us lots of pretty pictures of their steering committee doing so. If we go to the next one, we'll get to see a different upstate New York community. This is the St. James Mohawk tribe of the Aswasatne Nation in the Adirondacks. They got to have an in-person workshop with us. Let's see when that comes up. And they centered their workshop and their goals around cultural tourism, bringing people in to see traditional practices, traditional relationships with the land. We go to the next slide, you'll see some of their goals. So it's about educating everyone else about Aswasatne culture, traditions, using that to bring people in, to spend some money in the community, and then also as a way of continuing on all of these lessons and traditions with the next generation within their own community, making sure everyone has pride in it, ownership of it, and this will continue moving forward as a central part of the community's economy and identity. Then last but not least, implementation. Every community finishes this process with a community action guide. If you can go to the next slide, that goes through what the steps are, who will be doing them, how they will be done, and what time period they'll be done through. So this creates a process by which we will work with a few follow-up calls, and then the communities really get to take these and run, whether it's applying for grants, applying to have a community forest, or one community hired a recreation planner. Everyone's done something different depending on what their specific plan is and says. And now, almost 2 years in, we're getting to see some of these actions really starting to take effect, and how their communities are moving forward with this process. If anyone has any questions, they can go in the chat, and I will pass on to the next person. Thank you.
That's so great. Thank you so much for that information, Dan. I anticipate there probably will be a lot of questions about that program, so thank you. While we're getting ready, I see the next slide is up for the landscape scale restoration program, and we have Margie Haynes also in the national office to share a little bit about this program. So whenever you're ready, Margie.
Thank you. Thank you, Candace. Yes, Margie Haynes with the U.S. Forest Service, Washington office, cooperative forestry staff, and I manage the landscape scale restoration program. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate and share just a little bit of information about the program, and then where you all can find more resources and information. So to the next slide, please. So at a high level overview or summary of the program, it is a nationally competitive grant program, and it provides financial and technical assistance to restore priority forest landscapes, recognizing that resilient and well-managed forests provide a variety of benefits. They protect wildlife habitat and biodiversity, conserve cultural resources, and may also offer recreation opportunities. And it really is emphasizing these cross boundaries, so multiple land ownerships. There tend to be large landscapes, and they're place-based projects that achieve on-the-ground outcomes. Examples of those outcomes include reduced wildfire risk, improved fish and wildlife habitats, maintained or improved water quality and watershed function, mitigated invasive species, insect infestation, and disease. And I've included a link here where you can find more information about the program, including how to apply when there is an open request for proposals, as well as a public search tool where you can enter different keywords and search the projects that have been funded. And that would give you, I think, a better flavor of what this program looks like on the ground. The next slide, please. So a little bit about the nuts and bolts of who can apply and where these projects take place. Similar to the community forest program, this is an opportunity to work directly with federally recognized tribes, tribal organizations, and Alaska Native corporations and villages, as well as other eligible applicants. And starting in 2023, so in this year, we issued a unique tribal request for proposals for federally recognized tribes and Alaska Native corporations to apply. That RFP closed on the 15th, but details about it are on our webpage. And then in terms of where these projects take place, eligible lands are non-industrial private forest land and state forest land that is rural. And for the purposes of this program, rural is all those areas outside of the boundary of a city or town with 50,000 or more people, according to the US Census. So the term non-industrial private forest land is land that is rural. It has existing tree cover suitable for growing trees, and it's owned by any private individual, group, association, corporation, Indian tribe, or other private legal entity. And Indian trust land is included within the definition of non-industrial private forest land and eligible for landscape silt restoration funding. Fee-land is also eligible. Next slide, please. So the authority for the program, it integrates several different program authorities within the Cooperative Forestry Assistance Act. So you'll see that one can accomplish multiple natural resource objectives, and most projects do accomplish multiple ones. Just a sampling of different types of project activities that may give a flavor for what the program looks like on the ground. It's not exhaustive, but it could be around water quality and watershed health improvements, including efforts to improve forest health, reduce wildfire risk, restore riparian forests, a suite of activities around enhancing habitat for wildlife and fish species, including threatened and endangered, different types of wildfire fuel management, including thinning and prescribed burning, different types of invasive plants, treatments or survey, as well as reforestation with trees and seedlings that are suitable for a variety of benefits. What this program does not do is construction, things like buildings, roads, or bridges, or land acquisition. And then my last slide is up next. So wanted to highlight a couple of funded projects here. The one on the left is a community-based collaborative restoration and innovative approach to reforestation on public lands in Hawaii. And this is a partnership with a community forest program, which is it's a growing partnership of multi-generational community leaders, includes nonprofit organizations and agencies that are working to restore around 84 acres of invasive grassland to native forest in the Pu'uwa'a watershed. My apologies if I'm not pronouncing that well. Also to foster biocultural education for K through 12 students and enhance community well-being. So specifically, this project is focusing on a subset of those acres, around 30 to 35 acres, while also creating community-based capacity for restoration, increased opportunities for gathering culturally important species, and serving as a model for community-led stewardship. Another interesting element is that this project is led by Native Hawaiians who provide regional leadership on the integration of traditional knowledge into land and resource management. And then the project on the right, restoring the Teton River riparian forest, is located in Idaho, and it's in the Teton watershed in southeast Idaho, which is really important to that state's agriculture as well as recreation-based economy. It's been identified as a high priority landscape for habitat restoration as well as the protection of at-risk fish and wildlife species due to urbanization and loss of tree canopy, which is impacting water quality and watershed function. It's also home to the Yellowstone cutthroat trout, which is a species of concern that's been impacted by habitat degradation as well as climate change. And it's really focused on restoring really highly visible riparian lands along the upper Teton River through tree planting using cottonwood as well as willow, stabilizing river channels to address erosion, and developing a comprehensive riparian restoration management plan. And the project is occurring on a county park, the Buxton River Park, because it is visible to the public as well as contains an important recreational access site to the Teton River. With that, I am going to pass it back to you, Candace.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Also, such good pictures. That's fascinating information also. Okay, one thing before we pop over to Nancy's presentation, I just see a few questions in the chat, and just know that we do have a few minutes after we wrap up with the slides here to answer anything, and this information will be available to participants. So please know that. We can cover that in more detail later. So without delay, I'm going to hand it over to Nancy Strempel. She is also with the National Office, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the urban and community forestry opportunities. Take it away, Nancy.
Thanks, Candace. As you can see, we have a suite of different programs, and they can be interconnected to create a holistic experience or community for you. And as Gabe and everyone was talking about the trail system and stuff, that green infrastructure planning is so critical. What do you do when you get there? And so my focus is where you have your commercial areas in the community and your residential. So this is the Urban and Community Forestry Program. So my name is Nancy Strumpel. I'm the National Urban and Community Forestry Specialist with the USDA Forest Service and run the program for the national grants that we have. And I also have a federal advisory committee. The Urban and Community Forestry Program is the only dedicated competitive urban forest program in the federal government to conserve, protect, and enhance trees across various land ownership types. Next slide. As you can see, it's Section 9 of the Cooperative Forestry Assistance Act. The program provides technical, financial, and educational assistance, delivering nature-based solutions for climate change, environmental justice, green jobs, training, and this is done where more than 84% of the people live, work, and play. The program connects the administration's priorities regarding climate change, environmental justice, and workforce development, as specified in the executive orders 14008 and Executive Order 13985. Urban forests are 20% of all the forests in the United States and provide an important opportunity to increase climate resiliency in communities. Urban and community forestry and green infrastructure have the potential to meet community needs by reducing air pollution, stormwater runoff, decrease energy consumption, mitigate extreme heat, and improve human health in urban communities through fact-based and data-driven practices. Last year, we assisted over 7,500 communities and 250 partner organizations. This year, we received an increase in our core program of $40 million. We also received supplemental funding through our program of $1.5 billion over 10 years from the Inflation Reduction Act. This will allow us to move quickly to implement equity-centered urban forestry expansion strategy in collaboration with partners at the federal, state, and local level, as well as tribal, nonprofit organizations, and educational institutions. There are more than 140 million acres of community forest land across the United States. Urban and community forestry supports the maintenance, restoration, and improvement of urban forest health, while also creating jobs, enhancing community resilience, and preserving the unique sense of place in cities and towns of all sizes. The funding will be targeted to innovatively invest in communities experiencing low tree canopy cover and an environmental injustice by funding projects that increase green infrastructure in nature-deprived communities, reduce the effects of extreme heat, and employ residents facing barriers such as former incarceration to plant and care for trees where they are most needed. Trees provide $73 billion in society from environmental benefits, including carbon sequestration, reduced air pollution, and reduced water and stormwater runoff, as I previously mentioned. The urban forestry sector directly contributes $35 billion annually to the US economy. When factoring in the economic multiplier, the urban and community forestry sector has a total economic footprint of $64 billion. So who can apply? And similar to what Margie was stating, federally recognized tribe and tribal organizations, state forestry agencies, units of local government, U.S. territories and commonwealths, nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher learning, and faith-based nonprofit organizations. And the eligible lands are non-federal public lands, both urban and communities, with a priority in communities experiencing low tree canopy and environmental injustice, lacking existing tree protection and care and management. Next slide. So what would be some of the project activities? Well, the main focus of the IRA legislation would be tree planting and related activities, primarily focused in disadvantaged communities. This is to address impacts of climate change, extreme heat, flooding, drought, food deserts, extreme weather events, and invasive species. Other related activities that's mentioned in the legislation may include tree planting and management plans, site preparation to receive trees, training of community members to plant and manage their trees, job creation to manage the trees and train others, climate resilience, urban tree nurseries and propagation, invasive species removal, and hazard tree removal. So these are some of the potential other activities that could occur. What it can't cover is we don't plant on federal property. It may allow related tree activity construction, such as site preparation, irrigated gravel grow-out beds or nursery stock holding areas, shade shelters for trees to be planted, and other pre-approved activities. So below is the link, and it's so important that communities take care of their urban forests, because if they're trying to attract tourists and repeat customers, you want to create that experience and have your urban and community forestry communities well maintained to create that sense of place. And with that, I hand it back to Candace and Gail.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Also, really great images. Thank you for that information. Okay, so we are at the top of the hour, and I just want to offer that we have a few moments if we want to be able to go over to address some of the questions and anything else that anyone wants to pop on and ask. Certainly, I encourage you to do that if possible. And maybe, Gail, you could stop sharing the screen and all of the panelists that presented today can pop back on. So certainly, again, this is more of a business card, if you will, an elaborated business card overview of all of our programs, all of the way from a land acquisition example, an example of that land acquisition actually in full action, and then some grant opportunities and funding opportunities to actually care for the property that you have now or in the future, to really realize the full possibilities for what is available for some action and support. So I just want to say, I saw that Dan addressed one of the questions about my colleagues, all of our regional colleagues that are in each region across this country, really, that can help you with specific questions about specific programs. So that is available, but also reach out to any of us. We will get you to where we need to go and make sure that all the information is shared. And the link for CFP, I did see it drop in, but also you will be able to have it after when we send out the webinars or the PowerPoints to all participants.
I want to thank everyone for joining us for today's session. And I want to thank the USDA Cooperative Forestry Program for sponsoring this webinar. As Candace mentioned, it has been recorded and it will be emailed to all registrants. It will also be archived on our website if you want to refer your friends or colleagues to view it. We appreciate your being here today. If you would like to stay on to hear some of the answers to some of the questions, we invite you to stay. We'll go just a few minutes to answer a few of the questions. So, one of the questions was, is equipment, machinery, acquisition, and training? I guess that means, is there funding for that?
And if my memory serves correctly, I think that that was during part of Margie's landscape scale restoration presentation. It kind of sounds like perhaps are those eligible expenses?
Yeah, that's a good question. Equipment is it's considered an eligible expense as a portion of the overall project budget that's connected to implementation activities. Yes.
We have a question about, did you say that urban forests represent 20% of all forests in the US? Someone just wants to know if they heard that correctly.
Oh, Nancy, you're on mute.
Yes, and I can get the source for that if you want it.
Okay, and then someone also wanted to get the executive order numbers.
Okay.
So if you send that to us, we can add that to our webinar follow-up. Here's a question: how can non-federally recognized tribes apply for these grant programs?
I don't want to jump on anyone's toes if anyone has information, ideas to share. I think that this is a really excellent question that I have recently been having a number of discussions about, again, specifically for the Pacific Northwest side of the country. And I would offer a couple of ideas. One is sometimes some of our partners in the non-federally recognized category, if you will, have other organizational framework of under which they're operating. And so it may not be a direct tribal application process, but it would be an organization as a nonprofit. Perhaps that is one opportunity that I've had a number of discussions about. So as a nonprofit organization. And also I've been having a number of conversations with non-federally recognized tribes in terms of a co-management situation where a partner of theirs may be the owner, but they are starting to undertake a heavily co-management role. I can also think of another example in northern Montana in a similar situation where a land conservation nonprofit and a tribe, a non-federally recognized tribe, they co-manage land and enter into all of the exact same activities that we're describing here without the direct ownership. So we can certainly talk more about the nuances of all of those things. And I have a lot to learn around that, but would offer that I do think that there are some opportunities that may not be obvious at first.
Okay, is there a map or index to define low tree canopy?
Low tree canopy?
Yes.
It would be like no tree canopy or low, would look at the percentage. We just work with the entity interested in trying to create canopy cover.
Okay. We do have a couple of poll questions for those of you that have stayed on. Bianca, if you could load the first one. All right. Would you like to have further discussion with your U.S. Forest Service Regional Office staff representative? Yes or no? All right. If we could see the answers. Well, 100% of you said yes, so looks like we've got some work to do. The next question. Would you be interested in additional webinars or learning opportunities with complete program details? Yes or no? Also, if you'd like to have follow-up, if you could put your name and contact information in the chat, we would be happy to get back to you. 100%. Well, we will be getting back to those of you that are interested in more information. And I believe that's all the questions I see. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your being here and your interest in this topic.
Thank you for the entire IANTA group and all the support and orchestration and driving today. This has been really great. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, it's been a really educational webinar, and I know that our tribes with forests are going to be very interested in more programming. I'm going to leave it up just a minute more so that people can get your information in our chat.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks, Candace, Nancy, Margie, everybody. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, this is great.
Thank you.
All right, I am going to close it out now. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.